Hey, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Let's just make sure we're recording here. That we have everyone. Let me just double check. Okay, we're just going to give it about 1 more minute to let people join, and then we'll start in about a minute, 2 minutes, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, I think we're doing quite good for numbers, so I'm just going to start us off. Hi everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, yet depending where you are right now in the US. So my name is Kevin Rayburn. I work here at the British Embassy. My role here is Education Engagement Chief Comms Officer. Part of that role encompasses the Marshall element. So I'm also the DC lead for Marshalls, which is one of the funner parts of my job. I really enjoy getting to engage on all things Marshall and help out where I can, especially in my region here at DC. So firstly, thank you all for coming along to today's webinar. Just to give you a bit of kind of scope of what to expect from today, we are looking to use this webinar as an opportunity to do a bit of a deeper dive into the Marshall Scholarship application. And then hopefully you can use this hour to give you all a better understanding of it, of the application process, dispel maybe any misconceptions that you might have about the process, and also talk a little bit about the difference between a good application and also what a Marshall application should be. And then we'll also have a look and maybe talk about the changes to the application process and application period made from last year's cycle, and then kind of any important dates that you need to be keeping in mind. And also we may touch a bit on the online system as well. To help us kind of do that, we do have a panel here with us today. So I just quickly like to introduce them. We have Haley, who is the manager at the Marshalls Commission. We also have Lauren, who is the director for Center for Research and Fellowships at Georgetown University. And then we also have Prabal with us as well, who is the chair of the Boston Selection Committee. So thank you all for coming. I also like to say a quick thank you to Megan as well at NAFA for helping us facilitate this. I don't know if you want to say a few words, Megan, before we start.
Sure, thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to say welcome to all of the NAFA members who are on the call, especially the newer advisors, many of whom Haley and I saw in Chicago last week. Glad you're here to learn about the scholarship, and just welcome to everyone. I'm so pleased that Marshall has wanted to partner with NAFA to get this information out to all of us. So thanks for having me too.
No, we really do appreciate the opportunities that working with NASA helps us to reach as many fellowship advisors as possible. So we really do appreciate the opportunity to do webinars like today. And then, so the first half will be speaking with the panelists, and then the second half, we're going to try and do a Q&A session. So there should be a Q&A box for people to put their questions into. We'll turn to that for the second half. So please feel free to put your questions in there. Hopefully you'll be able to access it. And put your questions in, which we can then see, and then we'll try and get through as many questions as possible in the time that we have allowed. And then just quickly at the end, I'll try and touch on some potential other workshops we're hoping to do throughout the rest of the year as well. I'll try and mention that before we sign off. But with that, I think we're ready to start. So Haley, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you. And then first question for you. I was wondering if you could walk us through what changes to the application process fellowship advisors should expect relative to last year's application cycle.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I'm happy to touch on those points. So first change that you can expect for this application, and if you're new to this, it won't mean as much, but for the returning advisors, is there's been some slight wording changes to the personal statement for the ambassadorial potential. And this was made in hopes to better fit the ambassadorial criteria. So we had kind of a workshop, and we spoke to all of the selection committee chairs and decided on this wording. So we hope that your students are better able to answer this question based on the criteria with the new wording. So that's one change. A second change is that we've removed the tuition fee cap. This is not because the programs in the UK are getting any cheaper, but it's because we realized that it was administratively difficult to manage given the time of year that UK institutions advertise their fees for the following year. So depending on when your students started their application, it might have meant they had different fees available to them. So we removed it for this year based on feedback. It was difficult for us to kind of administer. This isn't to say that in future cycles there might be something else that comes into place to help us kind of, manage the increasing fees for UK overseas rates. So the programs are increasing quite significantly with inflation, and even more than that. So we'll have to look at this year and might have something else in place next year, but we'll be sure to communicate that to you. But for this year, which is what we're speaking about, there are no tuition fee caps. And a final point that it's not necessarily a new point, as it's always been in the rules, but it's something that the Commission will be adhering to even more strictly, is that whatever your students put as their year one, first and second choices are it. So that's what they will be expected to apply to. So it's just really important that you're helping them and telling them to do research on those programs, on those courses, reaching out to the institutions, reaching out to staff at the institutions, whether that be academic or people who manage the courses, ensuring they meet any eligibility requirements, and that the course would be a good fit for them. So applications are due in at the end of September. We typically announce to candidates by the end of November. And so it's not really a large turnaround time, and having your application in and then finding out if you have received an offer. So we wouldn't expect that decisions on the course that you want to do should really change that much in a 3-month window. So we really want that legwork to be done before applications are submitted. So whatever they've put as their first choice, they will be expected to apply to that institution. And if for some reason they do not receive an offer, or maybe that course has decided not to run, or there are kind of exceptional circumstances, they would then be expected to apply to their second choice. So I hope that's clear. It's going to be enforced very strictly this year for a number of reasons. It's parity for one, that's what they're selected for. And we've had candidates in the past that receive an offer from us, from their consulate and embassy, and a week later say, oh, but I have this other offer from an institution that wasn't on my application. Can I go there instead? So it's not fair. So we're just trying to ensure that everyone knows and is able to do the research beforehand to ensure that the programs they list are suitable and that they want to attend those. I think that's all for me on those points, Kevin.
Cool. Thanks for that, Haley. Can you maybe just briefly touch on the online application tool itself, and then the plans to transition into a new system? And if there's been any, I think you kind of touched on a bit, there changes made to address issues raised from last year with the tool itself.
Yeah, of course. So we're using Embark this year. So advisors who have been in their roles for more than one cycle will know that this is the system we used last year. We have had some training sessions on it. So hopefully everyone is au fait on how to log in and everything. This will be the last year we use Embark. We will be using a new system next year that's I don't know how many of you know of the Chevening program, but it's a program that's managed by the British Council as Marshall, and they've built a new system. So Chevening will be using it this year. We will be using it next year. So hopefully we will have it all ready to go and be able to provide details, guidance, webinars on how to use it. So all of that will be coming for next year, but no changes for this year. And some of you may notice that you are being asked to enter your details, even if this is something you've done for many years in a row. And that is to hopefully address, we had a data issue last year with Embark, and they've assured us by everyone entering their details from the offset, they'll make sure everyone's permissions are secure. And it's hopefully not too time consuming to put your details in and re-register if this isn't your first time. So I hope that addresses all of those. Again, we will be advising you of any changes ahead of next year's cycle and with plenty of time to kind of address any concerns. But for this year's cycle, it's still Embark, the same system we've used for the past few years.
Excellent. Thanks, Haley, for that. And then you did kind of briefly mention it in your previous answer as well, but can you just remind us of the kind of the important dates that we should be keeping in mind for the application process over the next few months, and just kind of lay that out for us?
Yeah, of course. So as you hopefully all know, there are 2 application deadlines. One of them is for your students and recommenders, and one of them is for the institutions to add the endorsement letter and kind of push the final submission through. So the student deadline is the 24th of September, and that's at 5 p.m. in the time zone that your institution is located in. And the endorser deadline, the institution deadline, is the 26th of September, again at 5 p.m. and the time zone that your university is located in. We have IT support from Embark. So if you have any issues as you're trying to submit the application in terms of submitting or uploading your endorser letter, anything like that, we have guidance that we've provided, but we also have email addresses that Embark can help. Obviously, with kind of any online system, we advise that you don't wait until the very last minute because this inevitably means that the system will be kind of overloaded if a lot of people are trying to use it at one time, but also just in case there are any last minute issues that you have time to kind of get help and address them before the deadlines. Again, so those are the 2 institutional application deadlines. For interviews, if you have students who are shortlisted for an interview, we will be adding those dates to the website as soon as possible. We're just waiting for the consulates to confirm, but they will be mid-November again, like they were last year. But again, watch the space. We'll add them to the website as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you, Haley. I'll turn to Parbal now, in your role as the chair for the Boston Selection Committee. I was hoping you'd maybe be able to help demystify the role of a committee member a bit. So who are the members of the committee, kind of what are their backgrounds, and then how does the committee ensure that all issues are sufficiently covered within the panel?
Thank you for the question. Let me just start, and I'm going to be a bit of a broken record, encouraging you to encourage students to apply for the Marshall Scholarship. It's an incredible experience. I was a Marshall Scholar from the University of Illinois, and I've been serving as chair for some years now up here. So in specific answer to the question, we have a 2-level process. First, we have a set of readers that take the applications from our region and screen them down to a more manageable number that our selection committee can then read and then narrow down further to our invited interviewees. And typically we invite in our region something like 17-ish to be interviewed. And, we get in our region maybe 100 or so applications, something like that. Maybe it's a little higher than that in some years, a little lower in other years. So I want to encourage you, by the way, to apply to the New England region. It's sometimes people overthink the regions, but really, I think all regions are equally difficult. And that matters in how we think about what our committee is sort of looking for to ensure we have fields covered and experiences. So when I look at the readers and I look at the selection committee, we have people who, it's not New Englanders, it's people who've gone, who happen to be living here. Everyone has to live in New England and has local knowledge, but people have gone to different types of institutions. Certainly we try to cover the different fields, ranging from science to law, policy, and the arts and humanities as well. We do that not just through what someone's sort of vocation is, but they may have studied something differently in the UK or previous to that. And so we rely on that. But our readers tend to be sort of a younger cohort who are fresher out of their graduate school programs. And so they're really tied into things like publications and what's happening in the universities. Selection committee might be will tend to be further on in their careers and have the benefit of sort of that level of perspective, the arc that a career takes. But our reading committee really makes sure that we have issue areas covered.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Really clear. So just kind of going off that there, you obviously receive a lot of applications that you have to read through and sift through. Can you maybe give us a bit of your kind of take on what kind of separates a great student from maybe like a great Marshals candidate, given that, most of the every student that kind of applies to the Marshals are all kind of academically excelling. What kind of makes that difference between a great one and then also that kind of Marshal element to it?
So I love that question. And I should say, as we're, reading through, every application gets multiple reads, both at both levels, the reading level and the other level. Every application will have, multiple people reading it. So it's not just the specialist that's assigned to. There'll always be a specialist assigned, but others as well. And what they're looking for, a great candidate versus a good, first, it goes back to the criteria. I'm just going to say that within those criteria, there are certain things that tend to differentiate the great applications. Because, for example, academic, we know we're going to get the GPA and glowing letters of reference about academics, right? Otherwise, that student, is not going to be applying. But what really separates in that criteria are how that program in the UK makes sense in the longer arc, and some real thinking about that, their career goals, and then the specific program itself, the first choice in particular, second choice as well. But, really thinking about, has there been communication? Has there been real understanding of that course and how it fits in? I think that's what separates it on the first criteria. On the, and those are there in the list on the website, right? Two of the four sort of subcategories. On the leadership point, the ability to have an impact and show results. And also, and you see this written there in the self-awareness, adaptability. I think that's super important. And then in the third area, ambassadorial, I think it's thinking about how that student will connect while they're there, and having a sense, not a concrete plan necessarily, but having a sense from that, what could be their future sort of role in the kind of the goals of the scholarship, whatever field they're in. It doesn't have to be something that's necessarily a government-to-government collaboration. It's collaboration across fields. But having a sense that they would be able, and the type of person, to have that sort of continuing relationship after an experience in the UK. Again, that doesn't have to be crystallized in a specific plan, but I think a great candidate shows the capacity from that. And in all of these, right, it's a show, don't tell, right? That they're able to show from something that they've done that they have that capability. I love to give examples, but I'm actually not going to give any in this specific answer, because there isn't a cookie cutter thing. And I would get concerned, like if I give some examples, that then we'd see lots of applications with those types of things. But it's different every year. we see a
Hmm.
scholar with something fresh and different every year that meets the criteria in a way that's wholly unexpected. You know, in the ambassadorial area, it's something about the UK that they're connected to that I haven't seen in a candidate before, whether it's an extracurricular interest or their academic interest. It's a way of thinking about the leadership component in a different way. And it's the way of thinking about, you know, the academic program and their plan in a different way, something I haven't seen, not a conventional academic sort of thing. So that's why I'm hesitant, because I fully expect we're going to get a Marshall Scholar from a place and with a plan that we haven't invested in before, and it's going to turn out great.
Perfect. Thank you for that. You actually kind of answered my last question there as well about the ambassadorial potential part, because I know that is something that often raises eyebrows and questions when it comes to how best to fill that out. So I think your answer there was kind of spot on. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. I was going to turn now to Lauren, from your kind of viewpoint, your perspective on the other side of things, being on the fellowship advisor side and how you advise your kind of students and candidates. So just quickly going to touch on, if I could ask you how you kind of look to build the infrastructure needed to support identifying the top candidates and then supporting their applications. Can you walk us through your kind of internal process for how you do Marshall's applications and the process you follow?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Also, Kevin, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to speak about our practice and to proselytize for the Marshall to those who are already a part of it and kind of get the message. I think I would begin by answering your question by saying that you have to have a ton of conversations with many, many, many students. A lot will in your recruitment. So essentially, we all have our recruitment tactics. You might send out emails. You might cut emails by GPA. You might send out using your network, faculty that you've come to know who mentor students who are really good at the pedagogic element. They might recommend students to you. So I think we could talk all day long about how recruitment operates, but once you have a tactic that works well for your campus, it's kind of going out and having conversations, talking about the Marshall, allowing students to imagine what an academic fellowship, whether Marshall or many others, might do for their career as it's related to a change they want to see. So some of the ways that we've been able to help identify potential fit has come with just having a lot of individual conversations that allow students to identify as, hey, this would work for me. So a lot of information sharing. And at the same time, I've been very thankful for the Marshall community. I find that Marshall alumni are sometimes the most thoughtful and useful assets and advocates for the program, and can really help a student understand, hey, this could be a possibility for me. It's not something that's out of my reach, or I hadn't even been aware of the ways that this could help accelerate my career interests. So I've been fortunate to have a good core of Marshall alumni that have come through the years from my institution that have been interested in sharing that message. But I've also found Marshall community just generally helpful. If you're an institution that, hey, I don't have a Marshall alumni, I often will work with, in the local area, my alumni to help bring the Marshall message out to institutions that don't have someone that can speak from a firsthand account. So I think that's helpful. Building the interest, and then I know as many of us going to workshops, the summer workshops, we talk a lot about this at our national convention, really fundamentally building a process that invests in the student and really helping them understand the potential of just applying. So some of those are maybe messages we've heard before, but if like Marshall can serve as a vehicle to provide a conversation about helping a student figure out like how to make the change they want to see, or even students that like they know they want to do something important, they want to make a change, but they don't know how, the Marshall application gives us the apparatus to be able to do that. So, I mean, that's a little bit of like a macro perspective, but I do think leveraging the people that have gone through the program, care about the program, want to sell, the program, having conversations with students, helping them imagine, and then honestly building up a process that allows them to understand the intricacies that it takes to put together a robust application. So we help kind of like provide scaffolding that sort of suggests, you know, you're not going to just apply for a Marshall a week or two before the deadline for the internal endorsement. We begin those conversations a year ahead of time, sometimes to plant the seed, that kind of thing. And that's been useful for our campus.
Cool. Thank you for that. Really detailed there. Thank you. When it comes to that filling out the application, then how do you kind of find the balance then between helping them provide a polished application, but then also making sure their kind of authentic voice still comes through without being overly, you know, is there kind of anything you can do or any tips you might have for that one?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question and something that I have worked a lot on. And I think I've found something that at least works for us and me as an advisor. Okay. So I think so much of what a student can imagine for their writing, for their essay, comes through conversations with an advisor, conversations with faculty members, conversations with other students. So when it comes to the writing, it's more about how do we have a dialogue or talk about what you want to do to help clarify your thought, help you make your own decisions. And I trust that that will show up in the writing. So when we do have writing workshops, we'll work with students on the essays, but nobody goes and redlines an essay. We give feedback that's oral, and often that's probing questions about the thinking that underlies the writing. So I think that a lot of the time can be saved if you're working with a larger cohort of nominees by bringing them all together and then allowing the students to ask one another questions, so that my job as a facilitator in helping the writing is helping kind of like guide a dialogue. So when a student has a draft of an essay and they read it out loud in real time with other colleagues or I say colleagues, their peers, with their other nominees, and we ask questions, okay, why did you do that? I didn't understand that. How is this connected to your degree program? Those are the sorts of questions that stimulate the thinking that when they go back and revise, it can show up in the writing. So if writing is a clarified thought, then the role of an advisor, along with your staff or along with faculty members or alongside other nominees, is to help the student go through the process of discernment that leads to clarified thought that helps show up in the writing.
Lovely, perfect. Thank you for that. And then I'll just finish on a point that Prabal kind of mentioned a bit earlier, which was the kind of importance of like the academic plan as part of one of the 3 criteria of the application. How do you kind of help with your students to develop their, academic plans for their applications? Is there any kind of tips you can give on that one as well?
I'll just be really brief. I have a ton of resources that I can circulate based on Russell Group and the Times Higher Education and World University Rankings. So there's ways to look at program fit. But what's really important for the academic essay is that, as Prabal points to, that there is something that's essential to the degree program that allows for the acceleration or the transformation of the career trajectory that can bring about an important change. And in order to do that, before the academic statement can be written, I must ask, in 30 years, what sort of change would you like to see? Where do you see yourself operating? What career? And I literally make them come back with, find a few role models that you're interested in their career trajectories, and let's talk about what career trajectory looks like. And from kind of a reverse ordered thinking, where do you want to be? How do you want to get there? Then based on why you want to go to the UK, what program do you think would best fit in that sort of long series, a chain of educational experiences that will allow you to help with the vision part? So instead of starting at the degree program, like, let me go through the brochures and see what fits and look for a program, we look at the other end, where do you want to go? And then what do you need to get where you want to go?
Perfect. Thank you for that. So that's the end of my kind of prepared questions I have for the panel. So we're going to turn this over now to the Q&A section of the webinar. I can see we've got some Q&As coming in already, so please keep sending them in. We've got a well-rounded panel here with lots of different perspectives of the application process. So you should be able to have your question answered, which is good. If I just start with the top one, it came in and it says, it sounds as though you recommend for applicants to connect with administrators or faculty within the program they are interested in applying to. Is that something that you'd recommend them do? I'll just open this up to the panel if anyone wants to jump in. Again, thumbs up, I think, again, nodding heads. Yeah, I think that is something that we would encourage people to do your research, for the students to do their research, find the courses they're kind of interested in, and reach out to the either, the administrators, faculty, staff, professors. I think they will be very interested to engage with students and help them with their questions. Haley, I think you got your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add to that. Sometimes on paper, programs can look quite similar, and it's when you get in kind of the weeds of the modules offered or the academics that are teaching on those courses and what their research interests are, where you really kind of understand what a program is in its whole. So I think, you can engage with that through a website, but if there, the more you know about a specific module, like what does that look like in practice, or if an applicant has similar research interests to an academic, will they have space in their lab or their research group that student could potentially join? So I think it's understanding, what separates programs that might look similar in their title, what those modules that they would actually be studying are, and the differences, and also the academics, what the universities offer as a whole. So there's a lot, I think, that can be found on a website, but the particular nuances can sometimes be better pulled out by speaking to someone. Most universities also have an international student advisor whose patch would be North America, for example. So they could probably answer a lot of the in terms of what does a university offer, but the actual course leads and sometimes even students who are on those courses, sometimes course leads will put students in touch to give their kind of perspective. So I think the more that someone can understand about a course, A, it helps them understand if it's a good fit for them, but B, it also helps them be able to speak to it during the interview and on the application, because they really know what that course means, rather than just it's a master's of, I don't know, engineering. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Just to add to that, obviously, as Haley put out, right, make sure that you are qualified for the program, right? That kind of, you have to do your homework a little bit and ask that program, what would I be admitted based on my major, that sort of thing. But the other thing is, there still is, when you're selected for the Marshall, if you were selected for it, right, you get it in the fall, and then you have your spring to take, presumably, your senior year classes. If there are classes, right, that would help you if selected, I mean, you can say in the application, right, if there's a prereq or a stats class or something, I may not have the background on my transcript right now, but I can reasonably get that in that senior semester and be prepared.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. I think the panelists can see the questions as well, but I'll just read them out for the benefit of people.
Sorry, Kev, just before we move on,
Yeah.
What Prabal said triggered something about in terms of meeting eligibility requirements, especially if you have a student who is thinking about starting a PhD or a DPhil from year one. I think that it's even more crucial for them to make sure they meet eligibility requirements, because it's very rare that a UK DPhil or PhD program would accept someone who doesn't have any master's level study. So I think it's, if you do have someone who's just coming out of undergrad, is thinking about wanting to start a PhD DPhil, they should definitely reach out to the course lead to understand if their background is suitable to apply, and also, I mean, they would need to touch base with a supervisor as well. But just wanted to clarify that, because we have had some kind of confusion on, I think, different UK universities' pages can be constructed in kind of a confusing way. But I think ultimately, because of the way the UK system is set up, it would be difficult for someone to come straight from undergrad to do a PhD. So they should definitely reach out to institutions.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Haley. Question here is, I have a student who is a straight A+ student other than 2 B+ grades from her sophomore year that occurred primarily due to having gone to a high school that did not have a rigorous STEM program. Other qualifications as a potential marshal are first rate for this person. How would the B+ grades be viewed, and should they be commented on by one of the applicant's references to put them into perspective? Anybody want to have a go at answering that one?
I mean, I can just share what we do, and I don't know if that would be common practice or how I might handle that question or working and advising a student. And if the this is oftentimes a role for the institutional endorsement to play. If you've built a relationship with your students, sometimes that information can be passed on. I think it's very helpful. I think like if there's elephants in the room, they should be acknowledged. That often means I have a conversation with a student about that. Sometimes it's something they want to talk about. How would they talk about it? Where would be appropriate to add that into the application? But I do think that's really important data to pass on to the reading committee. Maybe if the professor that's writing for the student, if it's in their course, that might be appropriate for the faculty recommender to address. But oftentimes that might be something that we've learned through the institutional process that would be fit for the endorsement letter.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Lauren. Next question down. What is expected from the section where students are asked to please list information about, oh, I just lost it. 1 second. Please list information about personal and non-academic activities, including dates where relevant / in particular. Please include information on any leadership roles you have undertaken. Should that be in a paragraph or list form? Anyone got any ideas for that one?
I mean, I guess I've seen both. I think it's more helpful if there's a little bit of a description of what it is rather than simply a list. And I think here, I hesitate to say less is more, but what I should say instead is like, do the meaningful ones and maybe leave out the not meaningful ones, because a long laundry list doesn't do anyone any favors, but a little bit of description is helpful. Both about, I mean, I think in particular, like what role that the student played, or if there's any other context.
Perfect.
A long list doesn't help the committee. I mean, just keep in mind, we like the readers are reading a lot of applications, and you want to make sure that what stands out about the candidate stands out.
That's great. Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. That's a good answer for that one. We've been asked if we could please review the rules around selecting year 1 and year 2, first and second choice institutions. So that is the person that's messaged that this is an area of the application that they've always found a little confusing, and so do our applicants. So review the rules around selecting year 1 and year 2, first and second choice institutions.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So yeah, candidates are asked to put a year 1 first and second choice and a year 2 first and second choice. And the kind of background on this is so that it forces applicants to really think about the full picture and how, the 2 years in the UK will be spent and how they'll fit together. And so I think it's really, really important. The first and second choices are because, ultimately things happen. So, if someone didn't receive an offer to their first choice, they kind of need to have thought about a second choice. There's not a lot of time, if that does happen. And obviously, a confirmation of the award is kind of dependent on receiving an offer from the UK institution. The rules about what can be a first choice and second choice, I don't have them to hand, but it's, year 1 first choice. If the first choice is Oxbridge, and I think there's 3 or 4 London institutions, if the first choice is one of those, then the second choice cannot be one of those. So that's within the year 1 first and second choice. So year 1 first choice and year 2 first choice, that rule doesn't apply. So I know it is a bit confusing, but the rule is within the year, not from year 1 to year 2. So I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Haley. Next question down is, has the Marshall ever thought of having alumni ambassadors like Gates, who are recent Marshall scholars in grad school in a region that are willing to be contacted by the universities and college in that region who don't have a Marshall scholar on campus? So this would help colleges with no grad school program and small universities identify Marshall scholars in grad school who could do a Zoom talk or actually come to the campus. I can maybe have a quick go at this one because I feel like this kind of touches on something that we are actually kind of looking into, how in terms of our outreach program, how we do outreach within the Marshalls program and how we connect with universities that perhaps don't have the resources or have much of a kind of awareness of the Marshalls. And part of that is looking at how to maybe utilize or use kind of our connections with Marshall alumni, Marshall scholars who want to kind of give back to the program and kind of raise awareness of the Marshall. So it's something that we are looking into how best to use that and to build that network and then help to identify volunteers within the Marshall community to do outreach as in the early initial stages of planning, but that is something on the radar that we would be trying to do as we continue kind of improving our outreach within the Marshalls context of promoting the Marshalls. Lauren, I think you've mentioned before in one of the chats we've had previously about potential when you've had Marshall scholars who are still on campus, they've been around to be able to help out with the next year's applicants. I don't know if that's something you can maybe touch on.
Yeah, I think that one of the greatest assets we all have as a part of NAFA are the collegial relationships. I have on many occasions where there's been an institution or an advisor that needs some sort of connection, information, support of the network, been able to provide to the best of my ability if I can. So that does mean, like if there's a local way that I can work with my local institutions in the Mid-Atlantic area, we for many years have come together and kind of often kind of shared practices and built that up. So if you're a single person office and maybe you haven't had a Marshall Scholar, look at the regional advisors around you. Some of those individuals are the best positioned to help you get the information that you need. And I feel the wonderful thing about our collegiality is that there's a lot of people that are interested in helping one another because we love what we do. And it's not about the institutional outcomes, but it's about our work. So I say that would be one. Another is sometimes just hitting the NAFA listserv until, and hopefully Marshall, they've continued to provide great outreach services. They have improved in that area, and I hope that they continue to do that. I think an ambassadorial role for a Marshall would be great. But until then, I even think just hitting up the listserv and sort of saying, hey, kind of tell them what you need or ask where there might be a connection that another institution could help facilitate. And if that's appropriate and I certainly volunteer myself for that.
Thank you very much for that. Next question down we have is, what are some of the reasons behind successful one-year applicants have given for applying to the one-year program instead of the two-year program? Is there any kind of reasons why people apply for the 1 year instead of the 2 year that stands out?
I can give a bit of context in terms of, why there is the kind of 1 year versus 2 year route. And that is because, so obviously this is a program that's funded by the UK government, by the FCDO. One of the underpinnings of the program is this US-UK relationship that is developed and then continues much after the award ends. And so I think the idea is that 1 year is quite difficult to really make those roots and connections, especially if it's a program that's 10 months, for example. So the idea is that 2 years really helps to meet the kind of objective of the program. That being said, I think the committees and the commission realize that being in the UK for 2 years is not always an option for everyone. And I think, you know, if someone had caring responsibilities, for example, or military service that made it difficult for them to be in the UK for 2 years, I think it would really need to be evident on their application as to why that they couldn't. But I mean, Prabal might be able to speak more to how committees kind of understand those differences in the applications.
Yeah, I'd agree that, you know, as a committee, we understand, like, you know, 2 years is more time to build that ambassadorial connections to the UK. However, there have been successful one-year applicants, and you know, a type of example would be a student that maybe is has worked for a year or has done something that has allowed them to really focus precisely on what they want to do, and their post one-year plan is a very specific plan. Either it's something that can't be deferred, or it's just, you know, a medical school or some type of program. But they're laying out the 1 year in such a way that we can really see, yes, this is something that you need. It's not a, can I get this honor and have, you know, be in the UK for a year before I start this other thing, but that it's connected to it. And there have been cases where we as committees nodded and sort of said, yeah, this is the right thing in this individual's career, sort of career plan, their sort of post undergrad plan, where they've already started by working 1 year, they're honed in on something very specific. It happens to be 1 year, and if they picked a different 1 year course after that, it would take them away from what it is that they want to do. Those are cases in which we've picked one.
Perfect. We've been asked, can we discuss the ambassadorial essay? What is it that readers hope to learn from it further? What are some of the common pitfalls with it, i.e., aside from quoting Churchill?
I'll take this a little. I mean, common pitfalls. I'll allude to sort of Churchill, but like if there are things that are just kind of very superficially UK in it that, and you know, anybody could have come up with, versus something that's, you know, more grounded, thoughtful, demonstrates some knowledge of the UK that demonstrates, right, that they have, you know, thought about UK connections to their field and program of study. It absolutely does not require having visited the UK or even done any foreign travel at all. We pick scholars all the time who've never been abroad. It's not that. It's just demonstrating the intellectual curiosity to have thought about how the United Kingdom, as it actually is, you know, some effort was made, you know, to make an understanding of, accepting, of course, like you're not going to understand until actually there, right? In a deep way, but that you tried, that you made you an effort with the tools available to you, to think about what being there would really be like, extracurricularly, academically, in the future, and maybe even some connections that you've already observed through your undergraduate experience or in your family history or something else. But really the candidates spend some time thinking about it, and showing it. And then we as a committee can surmise from that how they would actually be and respond if they were there in the UK. Because that's a discussion that we have is, okay, let's imagine this person in the UK. How are they going to connect? Are they going to write about their experience? Are they going to go and connect with British students, or in some other way? That's based on, you know, the kinds of things in that essay. How can we imagine this student interacting while they're there and beyond?
Thank you for that. Got about 10 minutes left, so we'll see how many questions we can get through in that 10 minutes, because we do have quite a few here. Is the Marshals less likely to award applicants who are applying for top programs especially very popular ones, over research programs? How does that come into the when the application process is being submitted? Is that taken into account or anywhere? Top programs over research programs? No. About shaking his head.
I mean, not, yeah, not explicitly. Maybe if I look back and looked at the data, I would try to think about whether there were something, but there's nothing, it's not been something we've talked about.
Cool. Next one quickly. Can you talk about the language that encourages applicants to choose courses outside of the Oxford, Cambridge, other London institutions, i.e. the Golden Triangle? It seems that despite the advice to look outside, a very good chunk of winners propose to do a course at Oxford, Cambridge, and other London institutions. How do you suggest we advise about this? Haley, I don't know if you might want if that comes into your
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to it. I mean, I think it ultimately goes back to the point about a course being the best fit, and obviously some institutions have, you know, better brand notoriety, or, you know, they're, you know, but it might not mean that there's a course that's the best fit for that scholar. You know, a lot of institutions, the UK is full of a lot of amazing institutions outside of Oxford and London, and they do a lot of really interesting research that might be very specific to that university or academic. You know, so I think it's really about understanding what is the best fit. I kind of mentioned earlier, you know, it is a UK funded, government funded program, and that should mean that we have scholars across all of the UK, and I think that's really important. And I think especially for developing a good understanding of the UK, it's important that students spend time outside of Oxford and London to really understand what the UK is and make those links. You know, we have applicants every year who study outside of the Golden Triangle and London, and have a really good reason as to why. You know, we have a scholar at the moment who's studying at Cardiff and is, you know, making comparisons between the kind of coal mining areas of the US and coal mining areas in Wales. And, you know, so there's a very good and specific reason that Cardiff is a good place for them. So I think it's not, you know, there's not a black and white kind of answer to it. Obviously, Oxford, Cambridge will always have a pull, but it doesn't mean that the course there is the best fit for one of your students. And I think Prabal might be able to speak to this a bit more, but I think that really does come out in an application. Sorry, Lauren, I saw you had your hand up too.
I can be brief. I think one of the things that helps is the occasion to teach students that people are knowledge makers, not institutions necessarily, right? They're vehicles through which people are making knowledge, and knowledge exists in networks. So if they come to you and they're like, oh, I want to go to this program at Oxford, of course, okay, what's the rationale? Who are the people? And maybe they've done that. Then, okay, who are another UK colleague that are not in those institutions? Like, find the intellectual trail to other institutions. So there might always a case be, you know, important geographic reasons that Haley gets to, that you might want to have an immersion outside of, you know, London or outside of the Oxford area. And that would be an important way to think about program narrowing. But also, like, who are colleagues, what other institutions, build me a map, and then come back and justify that Oxford's the best place with the best scholar. And then maybe we can talk about Oxford being the primary choice, because the rationale that has excluded other considerations. But I think it takes a lot of research, and research not about program names, but about scholars doing work.
You can, for your first choice, do one first year and one second year too, so that there's a little bit of blurring, right? So some people may go to Golden Triangle their first year, but then somewhere else. And I just have heard from everybody universally how delighted people are in other places as well.
Perfect. Lauren, I'm going to come to you for these next two. I'm going to try to tie them together because I think they're relatively similar. So can you provide some guidance on the individual who would be best served as the preferred recommender, especially in situation, especially in the situation that a college does not match students with faculty advisors. So that's a bit of guidance on who to recommend for the preferred recommender. And then the second one I'll tie it in is that the Marshall asks the lead academic administrator, often provost, to write the endorsement letter. Is it appropriate for the letter to be ghostwritten by the fellowship's advisors and signed by the provost?
Okay. On the first, I think that a student's recommenders are their recommenders. So first of all, like if they're thinking, here's all the choices I could possibly put down, there's not going to exist some magical person that's going to be their recommender that doesn't likely fall within the relationships that they've built over many years. After that, there's a discussion of, well, which of those individuals is best suited to speak about your academic abilities? I think it is challenging sometimes when potentially the recommender that knows them best in maybe a classroom setting, if they're trying to do a pivot, may not be the best recommender as it might align with what they want to do. But the way the primary recommendation functions is to really talk about, in my understanding, the aptitude of the person, how they think, and that is best coming from someone that's seen them in a number of occasions in an academic setting. So someone that's seen them in class, maybe who they served as a research assistant to, and usually you kind of can look at the recommenders and rank order them based on exposure to that way that they know the student. It's really great thinking about thesis advisors. Those would all be individuals that might best serve as the primary recommender. On the institutional letter of endorsement, some of this I might turn back to the Marshall because we do it very differently. I closely mentor students through a number of programs in which they're doing research or coming through the institution. I have relationships with all of the deans at Georgetown, and I write the letter of institutional endorsement and offer it from my perspective so that it's honest, it's open, it's coming from me, and my university is allowed for me to be the individual to sign off and to present that information for them.
Well, thank you for that, Lauren. Have we got time for just one more, I think, before unfortunately we're going to run out of time. Can you provide more clarification on how the partnership programs are viewed in the selection process? Specifically, is it accurate that an applicant is best to select year 1 and year 2 from a partnership school? I don't know, Haley, if you want to touch a bit on what the partnership schools are, if you've got maybe a bit of detail on that, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, they're on our website. I can't name all of them, I'm afraid. I wish I could. That should be one of my my tasks for myself. But they are universities throughout the UK where we have a partnership. So they are happy to receive Marshalls, obviously ecstatic to receive Marshalls, and they really make sure that scholars get a really great kind of care while they're there, and they start working with scholars from helping them with their application and any issues that they have, and they also help with funding. So for the commission, for the sustainability of the program, it's obviously very important, especially with as I mentioned earlier, the increasing international overseas fees that we're seeing, especially at some institutions. In terms of selecting for partner schools, I mean, I know I sound like a broken record. I keep going back to what is the best fit for your applicant. And I think Lauren touched on, what her process is of making the applicant really do that research to find out what the best school is. And in terms of the selection process itself, Prabal might be able to speak about this more in terms of what the selection committee see, but ultimately we want the best applicants. And I think, when that is one of the considerations, obviously, whether it's a partner or not, but it's ultimately, is it the best applicant, and have they have they been able to explain why the course and university they've chosen are the best fit for them and for their kind of university and career aspirations. So again, it's not really a black and white answer. There's a lot of nuance to it. I wouldn't say choose a partner university for the sake of it. Like, it's all about having the kind of full picture and understanding of why that makes sense for their application.
Parpal, do you want anything from your kind of perspective? on
I,
that one?
I think just to say, it's the criteria and applicant quality above all else. The story that you can tell with a different university that connects to career, right? I mean, that partnerships, a lot of them are that sort of non-Golden Triangle. That can be an important part of the story, right, of the application. And it can also show the candidate has really sort of done their homework on what's available in the UK and not just tossed off, their roads application or something, just copy it. Not that, I'm sure we selected great scholars that have done that. But it's just an opportunity, right? It's a very competitive scholarship, but it's also an act of, I'm a representative of, in some sense, of the UK foreign policy here, and I want to make sure on both ends we have a diversity of institutions in the United States that are sending people across the country, different types, new institutions have never gotten a Marshall, and on the flip side, that the UK is getting a balance across the UK, and that it's a factor. But you also can observe, right? Plenty of students end up in the Golden Triangle, sure. But it can be a really interesting application, and really stand out in a competitive landscape.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we've now ran out of time for today's webinar. Just quickly, I said I'll touch on some potential upcoming workshops we're hoping to do. So later in August, we're hopefully going to try and do something similar, a similar webinar, but this one would be around essay workshops. So please keep an eye out for that coming out soon. In the middle of September, week commencing probably 16th of September. We're going to try and do an Ask Me Anything session. We did something similar last year. Josh Stanton did, which we'll hope maybe to do on either Discord or Slack, and it'll be an opportunity for people to kind of ask last minute questions with regards to the application for the deadlines. And then in November, October time, we'll hopefully maybe try and do an interview workshop as well if we can. So those are kind of the three things to keep an eye out. So lastly, I just want to say thank you to our panel today. Haley, Lauren, and Parpal, I think, who's had to drop off. Thank you for their time, and also thank you, Megan, for helping to facilitate this webinar. And I will get the recording to you so you can hopefully push out as well. But thank you for all your help with this. And yeah, so thank you everyone for coming today, and see you all soon. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Thanks so much for joining.